Shannon rinsed the floor mop carefully so that it wouldn't leave dirty stains. Today, Peter had lost all his money in the casino again, and he would definitely be in a bad mood. His life was completely empty. All he did was gambling in casinos and having fun with girls. It seemed as if he had set himself the goal of spending his whole life uselessly. Peter could live a happy and interesting life. He inherited a chain of pharmacies from his father, and it was a very profitable business because everyone had health problems. Shannon would be happy to have such a wonderful life. But Peter was always unhappy about something and was constantly getting into trouble. There was no one to leave her an inheritance. Her mom had died of viral pneumonia caused by a severe flu when Shannon was only 6 years old. And her stepfather didn't care about anything but a bottle of alcohol. Shannon still remembers the day when the women from social services came to their house and tried to talk to him. But her stepfather didn't even understand what they wanted from him. He listened to them, waved his hand, and left for his room. Not surprisingly, soon Shannon found herself in an orphanage. But compared to a cold and empty house with a drunken and aggressive stepfather, the orphanage wasn't that bad, and Shannon got used to it pretty quickly. The fear in her eyes was replaced by sad thoughts. By the time she reached adulthood, she was a smart, sociable, and serious girl. At first, she was very lucky. After graduating from the orphanage, the state provided her with a small house on the outskirts of the city. It was a blessing to have her own home. Even though the house was very old and needed repairs, it seemed like a marvelous palace to Shannon. It felt especially good in the evening when she could make some mint tea and sit on the porch, watching the day's noise fade, and the whole neighborhood fall into a night's sleep. Soon, Shannon got a job as a sales clerk in a small store nearby. It was close to her home and not crowded. Shannon didn't like crowds. On the one hand, she grew up in an orphanage and was used to being surrounded by people. But on the other hand, when there were so many people that it was impossible to remember their faces, she felt anxious, as if she would get lost in the crowd and wouldn't even find her way home. All in all, the little store was a great place and she could have worked there for a long time. But after 4 months of working there, the manager discovered that some goods had been stolen. Shannon cried, but she couldn't prove her innocence. Her orphanage childhood only increased the manager's distrust. Shannon guessed that another cashier, Kate, was the thief, but she couldn't prove anything. Once, out of naivety, she was in a hurry to get home because she was waiting for a plumber, and she didn't count the money in the cash register. And then, Kate went to the manager and complained that Shannon was stealing goods. The manager yelled at Shannon in a rage and threatened to call the police. But eventually, he just asked her to sign a bill of debt. But how was she supposed to pay it off? She had no college education and no experience in good positions. No one would hire her now, after that scandal. Sometimes she could find random short-term jobs, but the earnings were meager. For 6 months, the girl managed to pay only 1/10 of the debt. And then, Shannon felt unwell thinking about the first phone call when a gruff voice uttered, "So, are you going to repay your debt to Michael or do you want to get in trouble?" Michael was the owner of that store. Shannon was very frightened then, realizing that Michael had involved the local gangsters to solve the problem. The girl was afraid of them because when she was a child, the boys had told her at the orphanage that there was a group of people that even the police were afraid of. She didn't know if it was true or not, but she was afraid to leave the house. From time to time, she received threatening messages, and several times she even found a note at her door with the words, "Pay back the debt." No one knows how long it would have lasted, but the situation took an unexpected turn. On one of the darkest nights, a terrible thunderstorm broke out, and, as if trying to deprive Shannon of the last thing she had, the lightning struck the roof of her old house. A short circuit has occurred. The old wooden walls quickly burst into flames. It took the firefighters a long time to extinguish the house, and then they left behind only charred parts of the house and a girl crying nearby. So now she not only had to find a job, but also a place to live. This whole story had only one advantage. Shannon's new phone number finally got Michael and the debt collectors out of her life. At least now there would be some time to save some money to pay off the debt. In fear, she decided to look for a place to live on the other side of the city. Luckily, she quickly found a place to live. A kind old lady, Mrs. Duncan, rented out a room in her house. They quickly became friends, and sometimes Shannon felt as if she had found the grandmother she had lacked when she was a child. Deep in her heart, she hoped that the job issue would be solved just as miraculously. But miracles only happen if you don't expect them at all. Shannon went to many job interviews but was rejected everywhere. On one of those useless days, she wandered into a pharmacy, more expecting a glass of water than a job. Suddenly, a young red-haired man peered out from behind the counter and said, "Hi, are you looking for a job? I'd be happy to hire such a beautiful girl. Our cleaning lady has just quit. Are you interested in that position? Later, we'll find a better position for you." It was Peter, the owner of a pharmacy chain. As it turned out later, he loved women and all kinds of life's pleasures. But Shannon didn't know that yet and was happy to have a friendly boss, a fixed income, and the prospect of career development. The next day, she met the two pharmacists, Annie and Stacy, pretty but arrogant girls. The communication wasn't friendly at all. Both girls considered themselves better than Shannon in everything. But compared to Kate, the debt to Michael and the burned-down house, it wasn't a problem. Besides, Peter had promised Shannon another position. Shannon diligently scrubbed the floor every day and waited for positive changes. Peter stopped by the pharmacy from time to time, smiled at Annie and Stacy, and brought Shannon some small gift, chocolate or a bouquet of flowers, took her by the hand, looked into her eyes, and left again. But he never mentioned another position again. "Do you like Peter? Or maybe he likes you?" Annie said, looking at another bouquet. "No," Shannon objected, clutching the flowers to her. "Peter is just a wonderful and kind man. He gave me a job at the hardest time in my life, and even promised me a better position soon." "A better position?" Annie laughed. "And you believe that? Are you really that naive, or are you just pretending? What better position? There aren't many positions here: pharmacist, accountant, and sales manager. Each of those positions requires a special education." "What kind of education do you have?" "High school," Shannon answered confusedly. "Well, then you have only one option: to become the next girlfriend of this womanizer. But he'll get bored of you quickly. Do you understand?" Shannon's eyes filled with tears, and she walked away, not even noticing that she had dropped the flowers. The next time she saw Peter's car pull up in front of the pharmacy, Shannon ran outside, so she could talk to the man without any witnesses. The pharmacy owner got excited, taking it as an expression of affection. But Shannon wanted to talk about a different topic. "Peter, please tell me, is it true that I can get another position here? Or did you just want to cheer me up then? I'm not asking for a promotion today, but I need to understand what is possible for me and what isn't." "Another position?" Peter was in no mood to talk about a job. "You don't like your job, but I can only hire someone with a college degree as a pharmacist. But you know, actually, your life could really be much better in your spare time." He tried to put his arm around Shannon's waist. Shannon pulled away, turned around without saying a word, and quickly walked back to the pharmacy. This time, Annie had told the truth. Shannon was returning from work in a terrible mood. Suddenly, a faint but insistent squeak came from the garbage can. Shannon slowed down and, obeying some inner instinct, walked over and looked into the garbage can. There was a cardboard box, tightly bound with duct tape. The squeak was coming from this box. "I can't believe it. People have thrown away their pet, knowing that it will surely die here." Sadness was instantly replaced by anger. The girl began to tear the box, letting the captive out. The prisoner turned out to be a little black kitten. He was standing on trembling paws, looking at his rescuer as if trying to understand if his luck had ended or not. Shannon stroked the kitten's soft fur and realized she couldn't let him out of her arms. "Well, I have found you in a box, so that's what I'm going to call you from now on." Shannon laughed. But what Mrs. Duncan would say? What if she won't let Shannon bring a kitten into the house? The elderly lady was a little surprised, but after hearing the story of Box's rescue, she went to the kitchen to find some food for a poor animal. Little Box ate the sausage with gusto and fell asleep in Shannon's arms. For some reason, the girl felt so calm and comfortable and fell into a deep sleep, cradling her new friend gently in her arms. The situation really improved a bit. Peter stopped bringing Shannon flowers and chocolates. Annie and Stacy also relaxed and even got used to Shannon. And now a little kitten was always waiting for the girl at home. However, the pharmacy business was on the verge of bankruptcy. One day, walking out of the pharmacy, Peter suddenly said, "Most likely, I will have to sell this pharmacy. Therefore, try to find a new job while you still have time." The girls looked at each other. Stacy was the first to comment on the situation. "We have nothing to worry about. Pharmacists and cleaners are not important positions. I don't think the new owner will fire us to hire someone else. Besides, we should wait and watch the situation. Maybe the new owner will be better than Peter." Annie and Shannon silently agreed with her, and the days went on as usual until, on one of those ordinary days, a skinny elderly man in a shabby jacket entered the pharmacy. He asked if there was a medicine he needed and, having received an affirmative answer, began to look through his pockets for money. The search was unsuccessful, and the elderly man looked confusedly at the girls. "Girls, help me, I beg you. I left my wallet at home. Please give me the medicine, and I will bring you the money in a couple of hours. I urgently need to go to the train station to meet my son, but I feel dizzy. I can leave my watch or anything else as collateral. I really need to get to the train station. I haven't seen my son for years." "Grandpa, we can't give you the medicine for free, and we don't need your watch either." Annie was adamant. The elderly man turned to Stacy, but she defiantly worked away. Only Shannon felt sorry for Grandpa. She asked Annie to give the grandpa the medicine, and if he didn't bring the money this evening as promised, Shannon would pay for it. A few minutes later, Peter worked into the pharmacy. "What the hell is going on in my pharmacy? Who gave you the right to give me the medication for free?" he yelled at Shannon. But the poor grandpa felt unwell. "If he doesn't bring the money, I'll pay for everything." But Peter didn't want to hear any excuses. After telling Shannon that she was fired, he walked away, continuing to insult the girl. Shannon slowly went to pack her belongings, not believing that this monstrous injustice had happened to her. When she was on her way to the exit, the same elderly man entered the pharmacy, accompanied by a young handsome man in a beige suit. "Look, son, here she is, my savior. If it hadn't been for this girl, I wouldn't have made it to the train station." The old man handed Shannon the crumpled banknotes with trembling hands. "You're welcome." She lowered her eyes. "Give the money to the cashier. But I no longer work in this pharmacy." "But who fired you?" the old man's son suddenly asked. "Peter, our boss," Shannon replied. "Well, he's almost your former boss." The man objected. "I gave him the down payment for this pharmacy, and tomorrow we'll sign all the papers, and I'll become the new owner of this pharmacy. So, today you can really go home. But tomorrow, please go back to work. And please accept my sincere gratitude for taking care of my father." Shannon looked at the man in surprise, not believing what she was hearing. Annie and Stacy looked at the grandpa angrily, as if he was guilty of something. The grandpa was smiling naively, but his son was very serious. Finally, Shannon found the strength to nod her head. The man smiled, stood aside slightly, and the girl stepped out onto the porch, squinting in the bright rays of the sun. She hurried home to tell Mrs. Duncan everything. The next day, Shannon came to work and discovered that the pharmacy was undergoing a global change. Arrogant Annie and Stacy had been replaced by two new girls, Daisy and Haley. They were very different. Daisy was tall and stern, while Haley was a chubby and friendly girl. But Shannon quickly made friends with both of them. But the miracles were not over. In the evening, the new owner of the pharmacy, Henry, arrived and suggested Shannon to go to the central office. Shannon walked timidly through the corridors and was completely confused in the office, hesitating to take a seat in the leather armchair behind the polished desk. "Have a seat. Don't be shy," Henry encouraged her. "I would like to get to know you better. All I know so far is that your name is Shannon. You are a decent and selfless person. Please tell me about yourself. I plan to completely change the HR policy at the pharmacy chain." Shannon felt embarrassed. She had never told her life story to a stranger before. Henry didn't rush her. Shannon sighed and began to tell her unhappy story. Without even noticing, she told her new boss everything about the debt for the stolen goods, the burned house, Mrs. Duncan, and her cute kitten. When she had finished, Henry remained silent for some time, and then he said, "Everything you have told me is a vivid example of how life failures often help people to become decent, honest, and kind no matter what. Shannon, let's do the following. I need a person who would control and analyze sales turnover in pharmacies and give me accurate information. You are a decent person. I think I can trust you. But there is one condition. Such work requires specialized education. You are an orphan, so you can enter the university free of charge, but you will have to study part-time, and it's quite difficult. And one more thing. My lawyer will solve the problem with the debt. They didn't go to the police, and the incident was never officially recorded. Your bill of debt is null and void, especially since they forced you to sign it and threatened you. So, are you ready to do your best to make a drastic change in your life?" "Of course," Shannon exclaimed, unable to believe her happiness. "I'll do my best." "Sounds good," Henry said contentedly. Shannon felt like she was dreaming. The piece of paper on which she was writing her application, her own desk and computer where she would have to work tomorrow, and the beautiful modern office. But the surprises didn't end that day. On her way out of the office, she met Henry's father. "Hello. I'm so glad to see you again. By the way, my name is Andrew," the old man said with a friendly smile. "Hello. I didn't even recognize you at first. You look amazing today." Shannon laughed when she noticed that he was wearing a new gray suit and shirt instead of his old shabby jacket. "Henry told me to buy new clothes," the man said with embarrassment. "He scolded me for not spending the money he sent me and living only on my pension. But times are unreliable now, you know. I thought something might happen to his business. In this case, I'd give him all the money he sent me over the years. I didn't realize he had become so rich now. Well, now your son is back. He's by your side, and everything's going to be fine. Of course, you are good, so sincere and kind. I wish my son had such a wife. He is almost 30 years old, but he has no wife or children. You know, if you don't mind, I'll do my best to make things work out for you and Henry. Come over for dinner tonight. We can all get to know each other better. Will you come?" "Of course, Andrew. Why not?" Shannon laughed in response, thinking about how generous the world could be.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me and began to speak. "There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only." "Absolutely right." His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. "I'm leaving." After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick, is something wrong?" Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, "Yes. That's Nick for you." Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, "I'm very sorry." Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, "Get his boss here immediately." It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. "What is that idiot doing?" "All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next." Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. "If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you." I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.